If you're considering switching broadband provider, the process of finding a new deal might seem a bit confusing. There's so much jargon and so many different providers to choose from that it can be quite difficult to find a good broadband deal. In this video, we'll cover the things you need to consider when choosing your own broadband plan. We'll explain how to calculate how much bandwidth you need, how broadband contracts work, and how to choose the right provider. Before we begin, feel free to click the first link in the description to read our broadband deals guide. This article explains the differences between each British broadband provider and their packages, and also guides you through the process of choosing a new broadband plan. The first thing you need to do when buying a new broadband plan is find out which providers service your address and the speeds they each offer. To do this, go to the Ofcom website and look for their broadband coverage checker. The link is in the description below. This tool is really helpful and is also easy to use. Simply put in your postcode and it'll show the providers that service your address and the speeds they each offer. Don't worry if the numbers here are a bit confusing, we'll explain what they mean in the next section. The first thing you'll want to review is the broadband networks available at your address. Openreach is the main British broadband network, which services almost the entire country and is owned and operated by BT. Almost every British broadband provider leases access from Openreach rather than having their own infrastructure. For example, other than BT, major providers like Sky, PlusNet and TalkTalk all use Openreach. Openreach speeds can vary quite substantially depending on where you live. In most areas, the network offers maximum download speeds of 24 to 70 megabits per second. However, if you live in a major city, the network can offer speeds of up to 900 megabits per second. Virgin Media is the second largest British broadband network. If you can get Virgin Media, you can get download speeds of between 50 to 1000 megabits per second. KCOM is sort of similar to Openreach, except this network is only available in certain areas of Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. If you live near Hull, chances are you'll have to buy broadband from KCOM. There are also a number of smaller broadband networks operated by smaller companies, which can offer quite good speeds. This is why it's important to use the Ofcom coverage checker. Using this tool, you can find out about these networks you might not know about. Once you've found out what your options are, the next step is to choose how much broadband speed you need. For some people, you might just like to buy the fastest broadband plan you can find, especially if you can't get extremely fast broadband in your area. However, if you have a lot of choice, it's definitely worth figuring out how much bandwidth you actually need. If you get too much bandwidth, you could be spending way too much on your broadband and have the opportunity to save £20 to £30 per month on your internet. However, if you don't get enough bandwidth, you'll struggle with slow downloads and videos buffering. Broadband speed, also known as bandwidth, is measured in megabits per second. If a provider says that their plan has a 36 megabit per second download speed, this means that you can download 36 megabits of data per second on average. To provide some context, Netflix recommends that you have a download speed of at least 5 megabits per second to watch HD video, or a download speed of 25 megabits per second to watch Ultra HD 4K video. Downloading a 1GB file would take about 5.5 minutes on a 25 megabit connection, about 1.5 minutes on a 100 megabit connection, or about 8 seconds on a 1000 megabit connection. Calculating how much broadband speed you need is not an exact science. As a general rule of thumb, 25 megabits is plenty for 2 people, 50 megabits is plenty for 3 people, and 100 megabits is plenty for 4 people. If more than one person at home is a heavy internet user, you may want to increase your speeds, just to be on the safe side. But if one person barely uses the internet at all, you may be able to decrease the amount of bandwidth you need. You can use our internet speed needs calculator, which we've linked to in the description, to get a more specific idea of how much bandwidth you need. There's nothing wrong with having a 500 megabit broadband plan when you don't need this much bandwidth. Ultra-fast speeds are a great luxury to have. The only downside to this is the additional monthly cost. It's also important to note, your download and upload speeds are measured separately. It's quite normal for your upload speed to be considerably slower than your download speed. It's important to ensure that the package you buy has a fast enough upload speed, as well as a good download speed. Otherwise, your internet will slow down when somebody uploads a large file. Now that you've thought about how much bandwidth you need to consider what type of broadband contract you want, or whether you want a contract at all. Here are some things to consider when comparing different broadband contracts. What contract length do you want? Broadband plans typically come with a 12-month, 18-month, or 24-month contract. You can also find 30-day contracts, although these are quite rare. Currently, Now Broadband is one of the only providers to offer these types of contracts. There are also 9-month contracts available sometimes, such as for students. If you want to leave a broadband contract before it ends, you'll have to give notice to the provider, and you may have to pay a significant break fee. This is why it's important to carefully consider the length of contract you get. Are you prepared for your monthly costs to rise during the contract? With some broadband contracts, the provider will raise the price every year by a few percent. If you want to avoid this, you'll need to look for contracts that specifically say that they have no mid-contract price rises. What upfront cost are you willing to pay? Some broadband deals come with an upfront cost, typically in the range of £20 to £30. Based on the investigation you've done so far, you should have a good idea of how much bandwidth you need and what sort of broadband contract you prefer. At this stage, you can choose a broadband provider. To learn more about the different providers and the speeds and packages they each offer, you can read our Broadband Deals Guide, which is the first link in the description. We keep this guide updated so you can see what each provider offers and the differences between them at any given time. The first thing to do is consider providers based on the speed you need. If you need more than 100 megabits per second and can get this at your address, then this immediately excludes the most cheap Openreach providers, which only offer speeds of around 70 megabits per second. On the other hand, if you don't need really fast speeds, you can include these cheap Openreach providers and exclude more expensive alternatives such as BT and Virgin Media. Next, compare the contracts of each provider that meets your needs. Consider the prices, speeds, upfront costs, phone and TV add-ons, and any other bonuses or perks of each contract. For example, with the mobile networks that offer broadband, such as EE or Vodafone, you can get more data on your pay monthly mobile plan if you become a broadband customer. As another example, you can get discounts on Shell Energy and at Shell petrol stations if you become a Shell broadband customer. Also, BT, Virgin Media and KCOM offer discounts for those on benefits. At this stage, you might be wondering why some providers are so much cheaper than others, despite offering similar plans with similar speeds. There are a number of reasons this could happen. The cheaper provider might be running a promotion, offering lower prices for a limited period. The cheaper provider might have a longer contract length. If a provider can lock in a customer for longer, they can typically offer a lower monthly cost. Or the cheaper provider might have a higher upfront cost. You've reached the end of our video on how to choose a broadband provider. At this stage, you should hopefully be ready to go out and buy a new plan. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Also, if you're curious as to what happens after you switch provider and how the change takes place, feel free to read our guide on the subject, which we've linked to in the description.